Letting go the key to true happiness. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the constant pursuit of success, approval, and material possessions? What if the secret to lasting happiness isn't found in acquiring more, but in caring less about things that don't truly matter? This is the tale of The Less You Care, the Happier You Get, a story that delves into the heart of Buddhist wisdom, revealing how detachment and mindfulness can lead to profound inner peace. In the heart of ancient India, nestled between the sacred waters of the Ganges and the bustling silk roads of the East, there thrived a city known as Varanasi, a place of spiritual magnetism, trade, and timeless tradition. Pilgrims bathed in the river at dawn, priests chanted mantras under banyan trees, and the aroma of sandalwood floated through the streets like an eternal incense. It was here, amid the cacophony of life and sacredness, that a merchant named Dhanapala carved out his empire. Dhanapala was no ordinary merchant. He was the owner of 50 caravans that crisscrossed kingdoms, bringing back silks from China, spices from the south, and ivory from the deepest jungles. He lived in a grand haveli with marble floors, servants at his beck and call, and storerooms overflowing with treasures. To the world, Dhanapala was the embodiment of success. But within him, an invisible storm raged. Despite all his riches, Dhanapala could not sleep. Every night he tossed and turned, haunted by thoughts of bandits looting his caravans, ships sinking in stormy seas, deceitful traders undermining his deals, and worst of all, the ever-present fear of falling from grace in the eyes of his peers. He had everything a man could desire, and yet he felt as though he had nothing at all. The joy that once came with every coin earned had faded, replaced by a gnawing anxiety that hollowed him out from within. Each victory only added more weight to his shoulders. The more he gained, the more he feared losing. One morning, while sipping on his spiced tea and watching the city wake through his balcony, Dhanapala noticed something unusual. A beggar, wrapped in little more than tattered robes, sat under a peepal tree nearby. The man had a bowl, some water, and a radiant smile. Birds landed beside him. Children giggled as they passed. He had nothing, and yet he seemed to possess the one thing Dhanapala lacked: peace. Curiosity struck the merchant. That evening, he instructed one of his servants to find out who the beggar was. The servant returned and said, "Master, the man is not a beggar. He is a monk, a wandering bhikkhu named Ananda, disciple of the Buddha himself. He owns nothing, sleeps under trees, and yet is known for his immense wisdom and tranquility." The next morning, Dhanapala, dressed in the simplest robes he owned to avoid attention, approached the monk. Ananda was meditating, his back straight, face serene, breath like the ripple of a still pond. He opened his eyes as if he had already sensed Dhanapala's presence. "What is it that troubles you, child of the world?" Ananda asked, his voice like a calm wind. Dhanapala fell to his knees, the mask of pride he wore in public crumbling in front of the monk. "Master," he began, voice quivering, "I have everything, and yet I have nothing. I am tormented day and night by thoughts of loss. My riches bring me no joy, only fear. I am drowning in a sea of my own success. Tell me, how can I find peace?" Ananda studied him for a long moment, his gaze soft yet penetrating. "Your suffering," he finally said, "comes not from what you have, but from your attachment to it." Dhanapala looked puzzled. "Attachment? Is it wrong to care for what is mine?" "There is nothing wrong with possessing," Ananda replied. "But the moment your possessions possess you, suffering begins. You care not only for your wealth, but for the illusion that it defines you, protects you, and ensures your happiness. But like the river, life is ever changing. Clinging to the water only ensures it slips through your fingers." He continued, "You live as though holding your breath ensures you will never drown, but holding too tightly to what must flow only exhausts you. Let it go, and you shall breathe freely again." Dhanapala sat silently, struck by the metaphor. For the first time, someone had put into words the weight he had carried. All his life he had believed that more meant safer, that success meant control. But Ananda's words hinted at another truth, that perhaps the key to freedom was not in gaining, but in releasing. Ananda stood and gestured toward the horizon, where the sun was now a golden coin slipping into the west. "Come," he said, "walk with me." The path to peace cannot be bought. It must be walked. And so, leaving behind his silks and sandals, Dhanapala walked barefoot alongside a monk with no possessions, on a journey that would teach him the greatest lesson of all. The less you care about what binds you, the freer and happier you become. In the mountain village of Sankara, nestled in the cradle of whispering bamboo forests, lived a young woman named Luma. Luma was admired by many for her grace and intellect, but her heart often felt like a sack of stones dragged through each moment of life. She worried about everything: her parents' approval, the opinions of neighbors, the success of her business, and even how others perceived her generosity. One day, she heard of a wandering Zen monk named Ryoshin, who was said to carry no money, no attachments, and yet walked with a joy that lit the path around him. Curious and slightly skeptical, Luma decided to follow the trail of petals he seemed to leave behind wherever he went. She found Ryoshin beside a stream, building a small shrine of river stones. He looked up and smiled without words, as if he'd known she would come. Without asking permission, she sat beside him. "Master," she said, "why does my heart feel heavier with every step in life, even as I try to do everything right?" Ryoshin nodded and pointed to the stream. "The water flows because it carries nothing," he said. "You are walking with a lake on your back?" Luma frowned. "But I am not greedy or selfish. I love my family. I try to help others. Why should these things weigh me down?" He replied, "Loving deeply is not the same as clinging. When we begin to fear the loss of what we love, when we shape our lives to please others rather than live in truth, we do not love, we attach." He invited her to follow him up the hill. As they walked, Ryoshin picked up a small pebble and handed it to her. "This is your first attachment," he said. Soon he handed her another and another. With each step he handed her stones. One for the time she pretended to agree just to avoid judgment, one for her self-doubt, one for the fear of not being enough. By the time they reached the hilltop, her arms were full, trembling. "Now," he said gently, "walk back down." She tried. Her legs shook. She dropped some stones, then frantically picked them up. "Why are you holding on to them?" he asked. "Because you gave them to me," she said. "No," he smiled. "You took them." She froze. Ryoshin continued, "Every time we choose to carry the weight of opinions, fear, and control, we gather stones. Life does not hand them to us. We accept them." Tears welled in her eyes. She slowly opened her hands and let the stones fall one by one. As the last one touched the earth, she sighed as though she had not exhaled in years. Ryoshin bowed. "Now walk with the stream." This story echoes a vital Zen teaching. Attachments are not proof of love, they are obstacles to it. Just as the stream cannot carry the sky on its surface without losing its clarity, we cannot hold peace if we are clenched around the fear of letting go. Ask yourself, what stones have I picked up that are not mine to carry? What attachments disguise themselves as love in my life? The power of the present moment. Far from Sankara, in a remote corner of the Zen lands, there was a temple known as the House of the Dawn. Here lived an elderly monk named Haku, who spoke little but was rumored to speak with time itself. Pilgrims came to him asking about the future, the past, the meaning of signs and dreams. Haku would always smile and reply with the same gesture, pointing silently to the floor beneath their feet. One rainy day, a scholar named Kenji climbed the long trail to the House of the Dawn. He was soaked, irritated, and determined. He'd spent years studying ancient texts on karma, reincarnation, and the nature of nirvana. Yet his mind was a chaos of thought. Kenji bowed and asked, "Master Haku, how can I understand the full truth of this existence?" Haku said nothing. He stood and led the scholar to a garden where rain fell rhythmically onto leaves and stones. He pointed to a leaf trembling under the touch of a single drop. "This," he said, "this is truth." Kenji blinked. "But, Master, I've read volumes of teachings. This is just a raindrop." Haku shook his head gently. "No, this is this raindrop. Not the one that fell yesterday, not the one that will fall later. Only this, only now." Kenji frowned, then laughed awkwardly. "But how does that help me live better? Understand karma?" The old monk smiled. "Karma is not something from a past life, nor a tally for the next. Karma is created right now, in your thoughts, in your breath, in your gaze. Where are you?" Kenji looked down. "Here, I suppose?" Haku touched his chest. "No. You are in your mind. You are either behind yourself or ahead of yourself, but life lives only here. He guided Kenji to sit in silence. For hours they watched the rain fall. The world outside Kenji's mind slowly returned. The soft ripples in the pond, the steam rising from the earth, the silence between raindrops. And then, as twilight fell, something shifted. Kenji breathed, not from habit but from presence. He felt the breath, the moment, the now. Tears streamed down his face. He had spent years chasing truth in pages and theories, yet truth had always been quietly waiting in the space between breaths. Haku said, "The mind seeks mountains, but peace is a pebble underfoot." This story offers the essence of Buddhist presence. Peace is not something to find later. It is something we miss now. Mindfulness is not a task, it is a remembering. So, dear listener, ask yourself, are you here right now? Or are you a ghost in your own life, haunted by what was or what might be? The silent mind holds the loudest truths. In the heart of a dry valley, where the winds carried the scent of silence and sun-bleached bones, there stood a silent monastery. No bells, no chants, only wind. Here lived a single monk named Tao Jin, who had not spoken a word in 40 years. Many thought him mad. Others revered him as a living Buddha. One day, a warrior named Daigo came riding with thunder in his eyes. He was known throughout the kingdoms for his sword, but recently he had been plagued by thoughts. Nightmares, rage, regret. No battle frightened him, yet his own mind had become his greatest enemy. He dismounted, stormed into the monastery and shouted, "I fought demons, tyrants and kings. Now I fight myself. Speak. Teach me how to silence this storm." Tao Jin said nothing. He turned and walked. Furious, Daigo followed. The monk led him through crumbling courtyards, up narrow paths, until they reached a wind-worn cliff. There, Tao Jin picked up a small bowl filled with water and handed it to Daigo. "Drink?" Daigo scoffed. Tao Jin shook his head, then pointed to the surface of the water. It shimmered with the sky's reflection. Then, with one swift motion, Tao Jin struck the bowl with his staff. The water rippled. The sky vanished. Tao Jin waited. Slowly, the ripples calmed. The reflection returned. Daigo stared. "The mind," Tao Jin finally spoke, "is like this bowl. Agitated with anger, fear, guilt, and clarity vanishes. Only when still can it reflect the truth." The warrior dropped to his knees. "But how do I still it?" Tao Jin whispered, "Stop shouting at the water. Let it settle." Daigo stayed in the monastery for a week. He sat in the silence he once feared. He watched his thoughts rise like winds, then pass like storms. For the first time in years, he slept without dreams. The silence taught him what battles could not, that peace is not won, it is remembered. This story reminds us that our mind is not our enemy. It is a mirror. When we learn to stop reacting and start observing, the storm becomes a breeze, and the noise becomes a teaching. So now take this moment, not tomorrow, not after your tasks, this moment. Breathe. Let the ripples still. What do you see reflected? Would you like me to continue expanding further chapters, or develop the rest of the video script toward completion? Dhanapala returned to Ananda, expressing his gratitude. "Master," he said, "I have found the peace I sought, not by gaining more, but by letting go." Ananda smiled and replied, "True happiness arises when we release the chains of attachment and live fully in the present moment." This tale reminds us that by caring less about the transient and uncontrollable aspects of life, we open ourselves to genuine joy and serenity.